With no further ado, welcome everybody to Elements of Utah with the Salt Lake County Library. I am Nissa. I'm going to be moderating our panelists today, and we are so excited for the third in our series focused on fire. So tonight we're going to be hearing from two panelists. I'm going to introduce our first, Dr. Carrie Kelly, who is a professional engineer, associate professor of chemical engineering at the University of Utah. She has a PhD in environmental engineering and a bachelor's of science in chemical engineering. She served 8 years on Utah's Air Quality Board and currently serves on the state's Air Quality Policy Board together with state legislators. Her research focuses on understanding the connections between energy, air quality, and health. And tonight she's going to be talking to us a little bit about our recent wildfire season, as well as what we can expect as we head into wood burning season and the winter. So with no further ado, take it away, Dr. Kelly.
Okay, so can you help me? Is that in presenter view or in regular view? Yes,
It is in presenter view. I don't know why I'm still on, so I'm trying to take myself off.
Okay. Are you happy with the view now? Somehow it didn't start from the beginning. So give me a second. I will get us to the beginning.
Oh, I think we're seeing your presenter view now, but it looked good before a moment ago.
Okay, sorry. Let me switch it. Hopefully it won't go back to the beginning. Okay, are we good?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thanks. So it's fun to talk to you. I've worked in air quality recently, but my work actually started in Utah, more related to fire. So it was fun for me to get a chance to talk a little bit about fire. Okay, so it's kind of interesting because fire's been a big part of human evolution. About 400,000 years ago, fire started popping up a lot more frequently in the archaeological record, particularly in Europe and the Middle East and Asia. And then archaeologists believe that this increase in our use of fire made it possible for humans to be more social, to actually it changed our gut, and it changed our ability to on the types of food we could eat, and it also likely changed our human cognition. Okay, and in addition, humans have also used fire to shape the landscape. For example, the Yurok Indians in California, or current California, they used fire to help manage their landscape for thousands of years. And in fact, now the fire managers are beginning to work with the tribes on good management strategies for prescribed burning. And so anyways, fire has been a big part of our more ancient history, and it also drove much of our more recent history. So fire played a key role in our Industrial Revolution. So in England, back in the 1700s, they had cut down most of their trees, and they needed a way to heat their homes, and they started using this stuff called coal, which was actually a very energy dense fuel. But it turned out they had to like dig up all that coal, and then those mines filled with water, and they had to come up with a way to remove all that water. And in order to do that, they developed some of the first engines. And initially they tried horses, but that didn't quite work very quickly. So they developed these engines that helped them remove water from the mines and then enable them to mine more coal. Okay, those initial engines were terribly ineffective, but they did work. And these engines were the beginning of the industrial industrial revolution. Mills began to pop up. These combustion engines proliferated, particularly in cities, with a bunch of negative health effects and negative air quality associated with them. But it was really the start of how the Industrial Revolution took off in England and then spread around much of the world. And it just, as a side note, it's kind of interesting. A lot of people talk about using trees as an alternative source of energy. And it can be a useful component of our energy strategy. But one challenge is that trees have about 40% the energy density of coal. So it does make things a little more challenging. Okay, so now let's talk about current times, combustion and the global economy. So burning and fires play a huge part of our global economy. So if you look at the fraction of energy that is associated with coal, natural gas, and oil, so the red, the green, and um, the gray in this slide, if you look at 2018, which is the most recent year that I could gather the data, that is responsible for well over 75% of our energy. And we're hoping to change that very rapidly to address climate change. But at the moment, we are still using fire very extensively to support our local economy. And then this also, if you look at at how that divides up into sectors, transportation, buildings, and power used by industry are all big uses of energy. So these are things to think all related to fire. Okay, so now if we think about climate, it looks like, okay, energy use is responsible for over 70% of greenhouse gases. So you can divide that up into all, if you look really closely at this slide, you can see all the different little pieces of the puzzle, but it is primarily related to the combustion of fossil energy and climate. So this is a huge challenge for us. And it shows how fire has translated into one of our biggest challenges in climate change. And I'll talk about wildfires in a second. So if you look at greenhouse gas emissions in the US, you look at carbon dioxide and methane. So carbon dioxide is primarily from the combustion of fuels. And then methane is from agriculture, but there's also a significant component of methane emissions that come from fossil fuel extraction and transport. So again, big importance of fire. Okay, and then there's some interesting work being done on whether or not fire can be part of the climate solution. So if you think about trees and forests, they absorb CO2. A lot of people like to talk to their plants, and those and so when they die, they decompose, they release CO2 back into the atmosphere, but a fraction of that CO2 is trapped with the decaying matter at our Earth's surface, and we're actually storing CO2, which in this for us is good. So that is in contrast to fossil fuel, where we are taking all that matter that was at one time biomass and then burning it. But people are now looking at strategies where you can harvest biomass, provide it to some type of energy plant, potentially for liquid fuels or to generate energy. And then and you would release the CO2, but then that CO2 would, in theory, be reabsorbed into the new growing forest. So that is one strategy that many people are suggesting as a potential part of the climate change solution. However, it is a tricky strategy. Right now, about 5 million metric tons of wood are being harvested from the US, primarily from the Southeast. However, even after you removed all those trees, the people who count all these things still count that sort of land that the forest was removed on as forest, and that land really doesn't absorb carbon dioxide that well. Most of these wood is harvested, it's converted into pellets, and most of those pellets are burned in Europe. So so that the pellet processing in the US is not really counted. And then the combustion happens in Europe. So again, just the accounting of this whole thing is tricky, and I think it is somewhat questionable how beneficial the use of biomass to address climate changes. There may be some benefits, but it is still a challenge. Okay, so I'm going to briefly talk about climate and wildfires in the Western United States. So we know that our climate is changing, especially here in the West. We are getting longer and more intense droughts. As a result of the droughts and other stresses, many of our trees are dying or stressed. In addition, seasonal rain and snow patterns have changed. Our snow is melting earlier. That's not great for us skiers. And then the delayed onset of winter rains in California have also, this all reduces moisture to the forest. In addition, we've got higher autumn temperatures. And then, so currently, this is somewhat of a scary statistic, but the Western wildfire season is about 80 days longer than it was in the 1970s. And that those longer period of when wildfires are possible just makes it that much more risky that we will have fires. And then the high intensity of our fires that are burning, in part because we have been suppressing all fires for over 100 years. So these high intensity fires are now killing trees that have traditionally survived the fires. So this is a big challenge for us. And this graph, oh, sorry, it didn't show up very well. But this is just showing the acres burned by wildfires, and that trajectory has gone up dramatically in the Western U.S. Okay, so this sort of shows this feedback loop for wildfires in the West, and this is going to be a big challenge for us because increasing temperatures equals more frequent fires. More burned acres means that you've got drier vegetation, and whenever you're doing these burns, you are releasing more carbon dioxide to the atmosphere. This carbon dioxide has some different radiative properties than some of the other gases in the air, like oxygen and nitrogen, and the CO2 traps heat. Okay, so these increased CO2 emissions are trapping more heat into our atmosphere, and then that means that that the land is less forested after the fires, and then these lands are less able to absorb CO2. And then again, so that all just accelerates the CO2 emissions and the warming. So this is not a great feedback loop to be in. And so this widespread fire behavior that we're seeing, it is likely going to be the new normal in the Western U.S. So that is that's not the best news for people like us who live here. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about fires, air quality, and health, and hopefully, and I will get to some things that we can work on doing. Okay, so one of the biggest challenges with fires of any type are its associated air emissions, and the big driver of adverse health is particulate matter. It gets into your lungs and it causes many adverse health effects. It causes and exacerbates asthma. It leads to heart attacks, strokes, and loss of cognition, loss of IQ points in children. These are just a few examples, but there are many studies linking particle pollution to adverse health effects. The combustion also leads to emissions of other things like NOx and VOCs. These react to form ozone, and ozone and particulate matter are two of our biggest challenges here in this airshed. And I think in the next talk, you're going to be hearing about air quality. So I won't talk too much about it because your next speakers will be talking about that. Okay, we also know that children and seniors, pregnant people are going to be more susceptible to these adverse air quality events from fires. So a little bit on, we'll talk more about how to protect yourself on this later, but you want to be aware of what air quality is. We'll give you some resources. In some cases, you may want to wear a face mask. If possible, close your doors and windows, keep things recirculated. You can use air filtration, and you want to use an air filter that does not generate ozone. Just a simple filtration device, nothing too fancy. And then you want to try to avoid doing things that will generate more particles. But okay, so one of the challenges with wildfires in the Western US is here. This headline was from August 6th of 2021. And it says that Salt Lake has the worst air quality in the world as wildfire smoke moves in. And Salt Lake City, you can see, is top here on this map. Oh, oops, top on the map. And we are worse than locations in Bangladesh, Afghanistan, and India that are known for terrible air quality. So this is, being the top of this list is not an awesome place to be, but this is just one of the challenges with living in the Western United States. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about residential and commercial wood burning and air quality here in this valley. So in this valley, especially in the winter season, our air tends to sink because the cold air from our surrounding mountains rushes into our valley. The high pressure can slide in over that cold air and act like a lid, and that can trap poor air quality, and that condition can remain for weeks. In this constrained airshed, it makes wood burning a very poor choice. And many of you are probably aware that the state has issues burn restrictions. And I would encourage you to follow those for your own health and for those of your neighbors. And I just wanted to present here some information about wood burning emissions from fireplaces and wood burning stoves and gas furnaces. So if you're going to burning from a wood burning device can emit tens to hundreds, even thousands of times more particulate matter than, for example, heating with natural gas. And if you heat with electricity, most of those emissions are outside of our valley, which are a good thing for our wintertime inversions. So, just again, wood burning is not a great choice during our wintertime inversion season. And wood burning can still be a measurable contributor to air quality during inversion days in our winter. And this is some work that our group did back in about 2015. And I'll show you that the levels have been declining, which is awesome. Way to go, Wasatch Front. But there is still burning on no burn days, and that is unfortunate. Okay, so this has been a very long story about wood burning on the Wasatch Front. But as the state began to realize that wood burning was a problem, they started enacting education policies and some restrictions on wood burning. And back in, I think it was 2014 or maybe 2016, the governor suggested we think about a wood burning ban. And the Division of Air Quality proposed a wood burning ban to be considered by the public. And the public considered that very vigorously, and they very vigorously did not like it. So there were more than 1,500 people that had attended the air quality board meetings. There was standing room only. There were most of them were angry and very opposed to that idea. And and there was no wood burning ban, and there is no complete wood burning ban. We now just restrict wood burning when poor air quality is restricted. I did want to just say something about selective information. So the group that was against the wood burning ban cited many reasons to be opposed to it, and many of them had a good reasons to be opposed to that, such as economic disparities. But they also talked about how much cleaner pellet and EPA certified wood stoves were than old fireplaces. And while that is certainly true, they are, between 2 to 20 times cleaner. That's awesome. But they are still hundreds of times dirtier than burning with natural gas. So again, wood burning is not a great fit for our valley. And the group that proposed this never showed anybody the part of the graph where you were looking at other types of combustion sources. So, and then I'll talk about what a great job the Wasatch Front has done on reducing the contributions of wood burning to our particulate matter in our non-attainment areas. So back in 2019, the state started restricting wood burning when particulate matter levels got very high, a level of 65 micrograms per cubic meter. That's almost double what our standard is today. And it is about 6 times what they call a ban in Salt Lake City at. Okay, but then as the board started looking at this, and we realized our inversions build over time, so we need to be proactive in calling a no burn ban, because once the inversion sets up, even though it may take a couple days for pollution levels to rise, all of the emissions that go into our atmosphere stay in our atmosphere during that time, okay? And then around 2015, some of the research we did showed that wood burning was a significant contributor to our air quality problem. And then there have been a number of programs that allow particularly low-income individuals to change out wood burning devices for other types of devices to help heat their home. So all of these efforts have paid off. So if we look at the contribution of wood burning from about 2007 to 2017, and it does take a while to gather the data and process it, but we have seen a steady decline, and this has been great news for our wintertime air quality. So this is a success story for us. Okay, I wanted to switch back a little bit to air quality and talk a little bit about indoor air and air quality. But this is also if you live in a neighborhood where folks happen to be doing residential wood burning, the same applies to you. So air enters your house through open windows, doors, through natural ventilation, through mechanical ventilation, and infiltration. But during wildfire events, we can see very high levels of particulate matter indoors. These are particulate matter levels indoors where I actually work at the University of Utah. And we can see outdoor levels of particulate matter are extremely high. They were running about 100 micrograms per cubic meter. This is about 4 times the National Ambient Air Quality Standard. But inside, we were running about 60 to 70, so double the ambient air quality standard. So although it was better inside, it still it exceeded the National Ambient Air Quality Standard and the World Health Organization standard. So just combustion and air quality really quickly. There are a bunch of emissions of NOx and carbon monoxide that are not good for you that you want to avoid. And what you can do, if you have even if you have a natural gas stove inside, you ideally want a hood that vents outside, and you want to avoid solid fuel burning inside. And of course, you want to avoid tobacco smoke inside. Okay, and if you're looking to be outside and to avoid poor air quality, EPA has this really nice regional fire and smoke map, so you can look that up. And if you happen to live in the Salt Lake Valley, out of some research we have done, and we did a little startup, but we now have these maps here on the Tetrad Sensors Air Viewer site, where you can look at air quality in just about real time at a very high resolution neighborhood scale. And that work grew out of a project that was sponsored by the National Science Foundation. Okay, you can actually do things that are relatively low cost to improve air quality inside. You can actually tape some box filters to a little fan. And that actually, people have done research, that is an A-OK way to improve air quality inside, and it's very inexpensive. Ideally, you would like to install a high efficiency MERV 13 or better filter on your house. But if you're not able to do that, or you're not, let's say you live in an apartment, the box fan and a filter is an awesome way to do it. You can use portable air filtration, use recirculation mode on your air conditioning in your house or in your vehicle, and of course, avoid activities that generate particulate matter. The other thing is wildfires are over 80% human caused. So we all need to be careful about that. We also need to be careful about all the tourists that love to come to our state and are maybe coming from areas that are not so flammable. Abandoned campfires. This year, the Pack Creek Fire in Moab burned a handful, I guess several houses, including mine, to the ground, and that was from an abandoned campfire. Firing ranges in 2020, 64 fires were caused by that. Sparking vehicles caused the, if people remember the Parley's Canyon fire this summer in July, that was caused by a sparking vehicle. So all these are human caused, and we can certainly be doing a better job here. More prescribed burns. The 100 years of fire suppression has led to a very excessive amounts of fuel, and research suggests that California needs to burn about 1 million acres a year to get back to sort of a sustainable fire pattern. So, and that's about what they burned this past summer, and we experienced very poor air quality. So this is going to be a challenge for us, and we're going to need to work on managing it. Okay, so what can we do? Okay, so climate. Do what we can on our personal choices around energy efficiency, how we take transportation, and encouraging good policy choices. Fire, air quality, and health. So winter, whatever we can do to limit residential and commercial wood burning. And for wildfire, limit human-caused wildfires, educate people and our tourists, have better enforcement, especially as we get more and more tourists into this state. And policy, I will mention one policy option. 50% of the tourist dollars in Moab must go to advertising for more tourists, which is really unfortunate. They clearly need more enforcement and some education of the people that are coming to town so that they do not burn down the forest. Okay, prescribed fire and learning from indigenous communities needs to be part of the solution. And then on an individual level, trying to limit our exposure to indoor combustion processes, the byproducts of combustion, and then using air filtration and trying to be smart about where and when we exercise. And with that, thanks. And just a little disclaimer about the startup company. So thank you for inviting me today, and I'm happy to take any questions or listen to the next speaker.
Thank you. That was fascinating. We do have a few questions. First, to go back to wood smoke and how the campfires and just all that very strong feelings about not having a wood burning ban. I know many of us grew up camping around campfires and we enjoy the smell of wood smoke. Can you talk a little bit more about the health implications of burning wood, not just what it does to the atmosphere, but even those of us sitting around a fire and enjoying that?
Yes. Okay. So I will mention that sitting around a fire outdoors for a short period of time isn't the best thing for your health. On the other hand, I mean, it is probably not something to be particularly alarmed about if you're a reasonably healthy person. But it is the long-term exposure to particulate matter that really gets us. So the health effects of wood smoke include things like asthma exacerbations. Actually, the long-term exposure to wood burning is one of the leading causes of death in developing countries. People who burn wood inside for heating and cooking in the United States have higher levels of volatile organic compounds. This is somewhat analogous to having a smoker inside your home. So these are the same types of pollutants we see, and these are the same types of risks. So so in general, it's best to limit your exposure to this.
Thank you. You had mentioned the incentive program. I wanted to do a quick shout out. For those who do rely on wood stoves or wood burning fireplaces who might be tuned in today, if you're using those for a significant portion of heating your home, or you know somebody who does, the Wood Stove and Fireplace Conversion Assistance Incentive Program, say that 5 times fast. It's through the Utah Department of Environmental Quality. They open it up once a year, and that once a year opening is tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. So they're going to give out 400 awards for you to convert your gas burning fireplace or wood stove into one of those gas or, better for your health, better for the environment. So again, if you know somebody who qualifies, or if you qualify yourself, it's that once a year opportunity that starts tomorrow at 6 a.m. So I put the link in the chat for those of you who want to check that out. We have a question or a request that you go back to the slide of the box filter. It looks like that got a lot of interest on how to make a homemade box filter. And I've seen this one, and I've seen others also where the filter is taped like directly onto it. And if you do a quick search for HEPA filter, box fan HEPA filter, there are a lot of DIYs and YouTube videos on how to construct those. So really, and I know so many of us can't afford to go buy the expensive HEPA filters. And it's great to learn that this is a way we can do it inexpensively at home and have the same results.
Yeah, and it is kind of nice to see that research has shown that these are actually pretty effective. So, I think that is, I think it's a great solution. And then, as just a reminder, if you choose to buy one, that's excellent. But do try to make sure that some of them will say things like generates positive ions. Don't buy those. Those generate ozone, and those are risky for your health.
Also good to know. Thank you. Going back, we're going to do one more question and then we're going to segue on to our next panelist. So for those of us who love that smell of burning wood and that fresh pine smell that, you know, it might be really hard to be giving that up. Do you have any recommendations on how to replicate that or something to substitute?
Yeah, so I guess what I would say is, save that for the summertime when you're, out in the wilderness, or or the spring or fall, and definitely do it in a way that's responsible, because you do not want to be the cause of a wildfire. um but it's better to do it outside where you've got a lot of air circulation. It is just not a great choice here in this valley during our wintertime inversion season. And then a lot of people do, like, if they do feel like they want fire, natural gas is significantly cleaner. So there's some really cool things you can do with, like, sculptures and rocks and natural gas burning out of them. I actually had a wood burning fireplace in my house that I converted to, like, kind of a cool thing with rocks and natural gas coming out of it when I have guests coming over.
Great. Thank you so much, Dr. Kelly. For those who might think of other questions or have things come up, we will do a full Q&A after we have finished the formal presentations. So continue to put those questions in the chat or the Q&A. We'll continue to monitor for those. And we are going to transition to our next presenter. So I'd like to introduce Brian Stinson. Brian, hold on
Howdy.
just a moment. Brian is currently a community outreach specialist with the Utah Division of Emergency Management and Be Ready Utah. Way before then, his first degree was in media arts, which led to a 9-year stint working in Utah's film industry. In 2007, he took a community emergency response team course in his neighborhood and fell in love with helping people prepare for emergencies. He has been researching and teaching emergency preparedness ever since. In 2012, he graduated with a Master of Science degree in leadership with an emphasis on disaster preparedness. And Brian now produces the social media and public service announcement videos for Be Ready Utah, which is a great opportunity for him to combine his love of photography and video production with emergency preparedness. His wife has said that every conversation he has with people always ends up devolving into emergency preparedness, and his reply is anytime is a good time to talk about energy preparedness, which is what we get to talk about today.
Emergency preparedness.
So we're going to talk about getting ready for winter, what we can do instead of those wood-burning stoves, what to do if that power goes out. So without any more introduction, take it away.
All right. Well, thank you. This actually is a really good segue from Dr. Kelly, and thank you for your comments there. Some of the older homes still have burning stoves. They're calling coal to my grandma's furnace. That was yeah, that was a lot of fun. But if you have an fireplace or anything like that, most of us are on electric or natural gas furnaces. And so we're going to talk about what happens when those are gone. Let me start sharing here. All right. Are we seeing the right thing? Good. Okay. All right. So yeah, this is all about winter preparedness and how appropriate for us to be talking about fire. And I was thinking fire and ice. Tonight's supposed to be one of our deepest freeze the beginning of this season. So let's get into it. I'm going to share a quick little video with you here. There we go.
When the sky turns gray, rain becomes ice, and temperatures continue to drop, you'll ask yourself, how prepared or unprepared are you? Did you winterize your home? Remove the leaves from the gutters? Insulate and caulk so you're less likely to shudder? Does everyone in the family know the winter weather plan? What to do, where to stay, and how to get in touch? Are your emergency kits ready? Is your radio on? Once the snow and ice starts and the temperature drops, stay where you are. Bring Fido in. If the power lines snap, you've got to stay warm. Dress in layers. Wear mittens and a hat. Do what you have to do. But never, ever do that. If for some reason you get stuck on the road, make sure you're prepared. Know what to do if this happens to you. After the storm has passed and the roads are safe, restock your emergency kits. Another storm could be on its way, so before the sky turns gray, rain becomes ice, and temperatures continue to drop, get prepared, make a plan, and figure out how you're going to stay safe and warm. America's Prepare-a-thon. Be smart, take part, prepare.
Okay, so that was just a fun little video from FEMA and ready.gov. Let's go into a little more detail about some of the hazards that we can face in winter. What kind of hazards do we face in winter time? Well, there's blizzards, extreme cold, snow and ice, and that can lead to things like slipping accidents, car accidents, medical emergencies like hypothermia, frostbite, and even heart attacks from overexertion. A lot more heart attacks happen in the winter time than in other times of the year. Ice, heavy snow, and wind knocks out the power. Increased use of fireplaces, space heaters, and candles leads to a dramatic surge in house fires. In Utah's backcountry, several people are killed each year from avalanche. So what can we do to prepare for these hazards? Well, that's the key word, prepare. Emphasis on the pre part. It means to make ready beforehand. We need to be ready before the first winter storms come. We need to prepare. It's never too late to prepare until it is. One of the first things we can talk about is weatherproofing your home. Things you want to do to insulate it, make it more energy efficient, make it a safer place and a warmer place. Insulate any water lines that run along exterior walls so your water supply will be less likely to freeze. Caulk and weather strip doors and windows. If you want, you can even, there's some places you can look up energy. I'm trying to think what they might be called, but they come to your home with a little device to check your home and see where all the energy leaks are. You caulk and weather strip your doors and your windows so you don't have those little leaks of wind coming in your home. Insulate your walls in your attic. Install storm or thermoplane windows or cover windows with plastic from the inside. A lot of times we don't necessarily have the means of changing all of our windows, but you can get relatively inexpensive clear plastic and put a second layer on the inside of your windows to make them more energy efficient. Repair roof leaks and cut away tree branches that could fall on your home or other structure during a storm. A lot of times, power outages and damages to home come from things hanging over our homes, and when that heavy snow, especially the early heavy snows, maybe when all the leaves haven't fallen off of trees yet, cause damage to trees that fall down and damage other things. Have your HVAC, and your chimney inspected. Like we talked about, most people don't have chimneys anymore, but if you do, each winter, have your furnace system and vent checked by a qualified technician to ensure they're functioning properly. If you do have that chimney or flue, make sure it's inspected and cleaned every single year. I remember my father-in-law, he has a fireplace, and he cleans it, and every 3 to 4 months he pulls it out, and it is just so full of creosote and all sorts of nasty stuff. So make sure you get that cleaned at least yearly. That's not only does it block the smoke from going out like it's supposed to, but it can be a fire hazard as well. If you have any questions about that, you can ask your local fire department to recommend an inspector, or you can find one online. Smoke and carbon monoxide alarms. Whether or not you have a fireplace or a wood stove or any kind of heater, make sure you have a smoke detector and a battery operated carbon monoxide detector near the area where you're heating. Test them monthly and replace the batteries twice a year. We actually recommend every time there's a change from daylight savings, either to or from, check those batteries or change the batteries, check it monthly. Keep a multi-purpose dry chemical fire extinguisher nearby. Now, if you have any questions what that is, if you look on the little indicator here, you see ABC. ABC is the one that you want for most of the fires that you might be encountering at home. You might have a different one that has a K on it. That would be for in your kitchen. K doesn't stand for kitchen, but anyway, ABC covers most of everything that you'd need otherwise. You also want to have fuel burning equipment to be vented outside. Don't ever have anything like your barbecue or any burning thing that is not vented to the outside. That's where the carbon monoxide comes in. Carbon monoxide, you can't see it, you can't smell it, you can't taste it. All you do is you start feeling sleepy, you fall asleep, and you don't wake up. A lot of people are killed every year by carbon monoxide poisoning. Check out the weather reports in your area frequently. In fact, if you can follow the National Weather Service for Salt Lake, if you're in the social media, you can follow them, and they give you alerts of what's going on, rain or shine. Pay attention to those weather reports, warnings, and freezing weather and winter storms. Know when the storms are coming. Now, let's talk a little bit about what these alerts mean. A watch, it means be prepared. A hazard may occur, but the location and timing are uncertain. And a warning, take immediate action. A hazard is imminent and it poses a threat to life or property. An advisory, it means be aware. A lack of caution could lead to a life-threatening situation. So when these things are issued, it's important to know what they mean. Watch means it could happen. Warning means it is happening. Advisory means you need to do something to protect yourself. So let's talk about your emergency supplies and including your emergency food and water. You know, every time that I think about toilet paper Armageddon from 2020, anytime that there's a panic, the store shelves empty. It's important to have the basics of emergencies. You know, maybe you don't have the budget for, I don't know, 2 or 3, 4 year supply. Most people don't. Make sure you have at least a few weeks. It's not hard to have a few weeks worth of food and water stored at home. The first place that I recommend people start preparing for emergencies is your disaster supply kit. Now, what's your disaster supply kit? That's something that helps you survive 3, maybe 5 days or a little longer with all the basics of survival that you or your family members might need. Make sure your disaster supply kits are up to date, replace items that have expired or are out of date. Have a separate kit for each family member. You can go to our website, bereadyutah.gov, for a great list of suggested items for your kits, and you can see this is what that document looks like. It's a pretty good list. And it froze up. Oh. Okay, just a second. My PowerPoint crashed. Here we go again. Sometimes computers don't love me very much. Am I still sharing? No. Okay. Here we go again. All right, now we're sharing. All right, run through this real quick. Blah, blah, blah. Where we were, blah, 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 blah. Blah, blah, blah. Okay, talked about that. Talked about that. Weather reports. Okay, disaster supply kits. There we go. Talked about go to Be Ready Utah. If you're dependent on medications, make sure you have an adequate supply of those. Again, make sure all these things are done before the winter storms happen. Make sure you have an adequate supply. Talk to your doctor or pharmacy about having extra for an emergency. Now, some things we're not allowed by law to have extras of, but again, talk to your doctor or pharmacist and see what you can do about that. Batteries, flashlights, and radios. You need to store their batteries in their original packaging and check their expiration dates. We store them in their original packaging because if contacts come in, if the ends come in contact with metal or with each other, they can leak, they can cause a mess. I can't tell you how many flashlights I've lost because the batteries went bad inside of them. Make sure your flashlights are still functioning. Don't store batteries in the flashlights. Check your radios to make sure they function. Charge all your phones, tablets, and other necessary communication devices. Consider having backup chargers. Now, there's some things that are really popular, little pocket-sized chargers that can give you maybe 1 or 2 more charges from your phone. Consider having some of those at home, always plugged in, ready to charge your devices. You may even want to consider investing in, it's coming close to the holiday season, gift giving time. You may want to consider sharing or giving backup chargers, whether they're solar or whatever, as Christmas gifts. Yeah, don't forget hygiene and sanitation. We talked about toilet paper Armageddon. Don't be left without essential supplies. Don't forget personal wipes, hand and body soap, disinfectants, hand sanitizer, feminine hygiene, diapers, whatever you might need for proper hygiene and sanitation. Make sure that you have an adequate supply of that. And it's best to do that now before the emergency happens. They say that preparing beforehand so that you are safe in an emergency, that's not being selfish, but waiting until the emergency happens when everybody else is panicking and running to the store in a panic, that's being selfish. All right, again, you can go to bereadyutah.gov. We have a hygiene and sanitation info sheet on our website, and there's a lot of great information there about emergency hygiene. Make sure you have heaters that can be used safely indoors. Whatever you do, read the manufacturer instructions, talk to your local outdoor emergency supply store for what's right for you. And as far as blankets, I think you can never have too many blankets. You can always just keep putting on more and more layers of blankets to add insulation to you. During winter storms, if something happens, you want to think about conserving heat. Avoid opening doors and windows. I mean, that's kind of a duh. But make sure that those are closed. Close off unneeded rooms. You don't need to heat your whole home. If we don't have power or we have minimal power, think about only keeping 1 or 2 rooms warm. Stuff towels, rags, or blankets in the cracks under doors. Open your curtains with windows with direct sunlight to let in light. Try and think about converting your home into a solar oven, so to speak, a greenhouse. Close the drapes and cover the windows with blankets at night to keep the heat in that you've created during the day. Be safe in whatever you do to create heat in your home. Make sure you have proper ventilation. We talked about that. If you use a fireplace, again, most places don't have that, so that's not an option. Use only the type of fuel in your heater that is designated to use. Do not substitute different kinds of fuel. Avoid carbon monoxide poisoning. Only use generators. Only use generators and grills outdoor and keep them away from your windows. Never heat your home with a gas stovetop or an oven. You can cause a fire that way. Okay. Continue to heat safely. Make sure to keep your heaters away from flammable objects like curtains or blankets. Use fireplaces, wood stoves, or other combustion heaters only if they're properly vented. We talked about that. Don't burn paper in your fireplace. I know a lot of times we think, well, paper, it's really easy to burn, right? But that is a really big fire hazard. It doesn't burn completely, goes up into your chimney and lodges there and creates a fire hazard. Always use a screen with your fireplace. Better than using candles is using a flashlight. If you can get away with it, don't use any kind of open flame at all in your home. Another important thing you can do to stay warm is eat and stay hydrated. One of the best things that you can drink is hot cocoa. It's high in calories and it adds heat to your body, but you need to stay hydrated because an unhydrated body, a dehydrated body, does not transfer warmth through your bloodstream as well as a properly hydrated body. Stay away from alcoholic drinks and caffeinated beverages because they actually cause your body to lose heat. They may cause your body to feel warmer, but what's happening is your capillaries, your blood vessels are opening up and widening. So it feels like you're warmer, but what's actually happening is that heat is just leaving your body a whole lot faster. So let's go through this. What did we just learn? Let's say a cold snap just happens. Oh, that's actually going to happen tonight. It freezes all city utilities. Let's hope that doesn't happen. So what are you going to do? In this case, we're going to assume we don't have wood burning or natural gas fireplaces because, again, most homes, condos, and apartments don't have those anyway. So what are we going to do? We want to look for and create a warm room. If you can understand a few basic scientific principles, you can adapt the situation you're in using the resources you have to make some life-saving shelters. You want to look for and create these warm rooms because it's easier and more practical, like I said before, to close off unused areas of your home. So even before we look for a warm room, we want to start dressing in layers. You want to have a base layer next to your skin that's some kind of synthetic material like nylon or fleece, something like that, that will wick or pull the moisture away from your body. You don't want moisture next to your body from sweat or anything like that next to your body, because we all know in the summertime, sweat is a good thing because it cools you down. You don't want to be cooling down in the wintertime. So synthetic material is that base layer. Your next layer, multiple insulation layers, what they do is just like the insulation in your home that creates layers of air that traps heat and prevents it from leaving your body. And the nice thing about the insulation layers, you can add them or take them off as necessary to feel comfortable. And then the last one is the outside protective layer. That'd be like if you're outside, it protects the insulation layers from things like wind and rain and moisture. So the first thing, dress in layers. Think about high level, low ceiling, south facing rooms. Remember, heat rises, so you want to be in higher places. The highest rooms in your home are the warmest. The closer you are to the ceiling, the closer you are to the trapped heat. Choose a room with low ceilings. The sun's the most direct on the south side of your home, so it's also the warmest. Keep your windows clear and clean during the day. Have you ever thought about Windex being an emergency preparedness supply? Yeah, keep those windows clean so you can get as much light in as possible. And then insulate the windows at night, close the blinds, close the drapes, maybe even put up blankets to insulate those windows at night to keep the heat in. Isolate that room that you're in, like we talked about before. Put blankets or towels, something around the base of the doors. Make a nest. Did you ever make a fort out of cushions from the couch? I got in trouble for doing that a few times. But think about doing that again. It makes a great insulated room within your warm room. So you've got your big room, but then a smaller room, it's even easier to keep that warmth inside the smaller room. You could even pop up a tent inside your warm room. Anything you can do to hold that tent in. Think about making insulative layers within your warm room. And get cozy with the family. You know, grandma and grandpa, mom, dad, and all the kids. Everybody snuggle in there together, because as we're all generating heat, it helps us to maintain warmth for everyone, especially for elderly people and young children. It's hard for them to maintain bodily temperature. And then if you are going to use a fireplace, wood stove, or space heater, make sure that it's vented properly. Okay, remember, in a disaster, you don't rise to the occasion, you sink to your level of preparedness. So I hope that if we take these principles that I've taught you tonight and prepare for that possible emergency of losing power or losing natural gas, whatever it is that you heat your home with during a really cold time of this winter season, that you'll be prepared and know what you can do to survive that. So are you ready? And there's my contact information. Thank you very much for letting me share that. Is there any questions?
We do have a question here about alternative power sources during an emergency. So thinking of those headlines in last year very recently when we had the power outages and all those headlines about people using generators wrong and all the deaths from people trying to heat their home wrong. I think you addressed that a lot. But what also hit the headlines were Home Depot, everybody was selling out of generators.
Right.
So as you again talk about getting prepared, could you talk a little bit about generators versus battery packs and maybe a little bit of how those factor into these situations?
Well, generators, they are a good short-term solution for a power loss. They're only meant to last a few days to a few weeks. If your dependency on that generator is beyond a few weeks, you may want to reconsider your dependency on that and think if there's something else you can do. But that being said, there's a lot of good generators. Generator safety, don't plug it directly into your home. It's not meant to be used that way. You plug your devices, your appliances directly into the generator, excuse me, and your generator should always be outside. Now I'm talking about the gas or natural gas generators. You never ever use those inside. That's the same thing as you wouldn't drive your car inside your home and turn the engine on in there. Carbon monoxide kills. Don't plug it directly into your house, as I said. Make sure that whatever you are plugging into your generator has the ability to run that device. You can't get a small generator and plug like your freezer into it. Make sure that you have the correct wattage for that. And also know that many appliances, when they first kick on, there's a big spike in the energy consumption. And then once it's running, it runs at a more constant rate. Check with whoever you go with for generators to make sure that what you want to run will be able to be run with that device. Now, that would be gas and propane powered generators. I've actually, just a thought, I have seen a few manufacturers make ones that are dual fuel. You can use gas or propane. Not putting all your eggs in one basket, as they say. That might be a good idea. Now, that being said, generators also tend to be a little expensive. Other generators, there are solar generators. Those are quite expensive as well. And they're dependent on there being good sunlight out there to get a full charge. But you can have the power pack itself always plugged in during normal times. And then if the power does go out during the daytime, then you can pull your solar panels out and plug those into your smaller, your solar generator. Solar generators tend to be smaller. They're not as powerful as the gas and propane powered generators, but there are some pretty hefty solar generators as well. And there's a lot of different manufacturers for those as well. You'll just need to do some online research for that. Did I answer the question about that? There's a lot of different options for big generators. And I also talked about smaller charging devices for your small electronic devices.
And the follow-up to that, and this might be a very specific question outside of your, but it's been posed with battery packs and generators, and you talked a little bit about that, and the battery packs also that once it's out, and the larger battery packs that I'm using my hands here that you can use to kind of generate that, they're going to run out of power as well. And we might have some people on the call. The question was asked about, can you use your hybrid or electric vehicle to charge those battery packs? Is that a safe thing to do? And is that a way that you could kind of work out something during one of these power outages?
I know that that's an option on some hybrid and electric vehicles, that they can be used as power sources as well. You would need to check with your vehicle manufacturer, and you'd need to check the input device on your other electronic devices. But I mean, just like a standard gasoline powered car, you've got the 12-volt plug-in that many devices can plug into that 12-volt, and many of them have USB plugins as well. So I'd imagine that the electric cars have that same option.
And this question could go to Dr. Kelly or to Brian. With, you mentioned generators being gas and propane powered, and of course that we're also seeing California putting a ban on some of those. So what is the implication there, either environmentally or alternatives to these that we are starting to see bans on? Any thoughts there?
Dr. Kelly, you might know this one better than me. I know that the propane ones are cleaner than the gasoline burning ones.
Yeah, so just as a matter of sort of principle, solid fuel is the most polluting, liquid fuel is next, and then gas fuel tends to be the least polluting. So yeah, so those are going to be a little cleaner and lower emission.
So if you can go with a battery pack then that's electric, and you have a way to charge that at home, that would probably be your most environmentally friendly, if I'm understanding.
Yes, and in fact, when we took a trip down the Grand Canyon, I have a little solar panel charger for a cell phone. So I'm ready to use that for my next emergency, though.
And there are a lot of brands. Be Ready Utah, we don't tell you which brand to buy. We encourage you to do your own research on that. But there are actually a lot of even Utah companies that sell high quality solar generating devices. I guess they don't generate the solar, they solar powered devices.
And so just to recap for our audiences and make sure I'm understanding and that we're all on the same page. So when we're talking about disaster preparedness and winter preparedness, we should be thinking about all our devices, from making sure that our cell phones are charged so that we can call in case of an emergency, but also that like our fridge is still plugged in so that we still have food and all of those things. And so we're talking about everything from like the little power chargers that you charge the same way as your phone, the little battery packs, all the way up to the big battery packs that would keep your fridge going.
Right. Yeah, you need to make sure that whatever you're planning to power, you have the proper wattage of device to charge it. Yeah, you're not going to run your fridge off of one of those little pocket-sized power packs.
Right.
It's probably not going to work for my Grand Canyon solar charger either.
Right.
I think I keep seeing some participants' hand being raised. I don't think we have ability to unmute attendees, but if you do have a question, just throw it in the chat or the Q&A. You should be able to get to your chat on the bottom of the screen. There's a button that says chat. There's also a ... that says Q&A, and we are scheduled to go till 8:30. So if you have questions, please put those in, and we will answer. The panelists will answer those as best as they are able. Our next question, on your website, Be Ready Utah, there's 12 areas of preparedness. So in your experience in doing these presentations, what area do people most often forget when they're preparing for winter? Where do you see people most often forgetting?
Well, here in Utah, a lot of people tend to have, this is hyperbole, but 1,000 pounds of wheat, and they think I'm prepared for emergencies. So yeah, a lot of times we have that food storage, but many of us don't even have that. More important than even your food storage is your water storage. You can only live 3 to 4 days without clean water. So make sure that you have a good supply of that. And one of those 55-gallon barrels, that'll last one person for a month or more. So, I mean, just one of those, or even we recommend about 15 gallons per person for about 2 weeks. So, have some water on hand storage. And I love doing water storage presentations because a lot of people have questions about that. We don't have time for that now, but that's one of them. We also have information on our website about the things we shared today and sheltering. Just some physics concepts about sheltering, about learning about heat conduction, how heat is transferred from one area to another, and how you can minimize that or maximize that depending on how you want to be cool or be warm. And then another one that we don't like to think about because it's kind of icky is the sanitation and hygiene issue. Many places along the Wasatch Front, we don't have the back 40 to go out to and dig a hole if we need to take care of some personal business. So what do we do in those kinds of circumstances? And there's information about that on Be Ready Utah as well, about what you can do if you're in a more suburban or urban setting.
Follow-up question on water. Dr. Kelly's asking, what about the ceramic water filters for camping? And I'll expand that and say, water filters in general, like a Berkey or the ceramic water filters.
Well, again, you can go to the Be Ready Utah website for information on that. But I recommend in an emergency situation, a 3-part process in filtering or treating water. A purification process that kills what's in the water, but it doesn't actually remove anything. That would be like boiling it or adding sodium hypochlorite standard bleach to your water, 8 drops per gallon. Those are 2 ways of purifying. But then you also need to do the physical filter that removes things from the water. And that's just with a commercial filter that you can get. You mentioned Berkey is an option for that. There's a lot of different brands. Aquamira is a Utah company. Here I am talking about companies, but yeah, do your research on that. Go to your emergency preparedness or outdoor retailer. There's different kinds of filters. There's little straw filter sizes that are great for your disaster supply kit or when you go out camping or going down the Grand Canyon. There's larger ones that are for groups that are more of the pump style. And then the larger container ones that would be like on your kitchen counter during an emergency. Different situations call for different kinds of filters, but again, I recommend a 3-part process. Kind of a 4-part process. Choose the cleanest source of water and then give it a pre-filter, put it through a cloth or something just to get the big chunks out. Then you want to put it through your nice filter. If you don't do the pre-filter, it clogs up your other filter, and then the expensive one you bought from the store won't last as long. And then you may need to boil it to kill anything that may be left in the water. Again, all that information is on bereadyutah.gov. Was that a shameless plug?
It was seamless, shameless
Okay.
and seamless. Thank you. So again, if anybody has any more questions, go ahead and put those in the chat. I want to thank both Dr. Kelly and Brian for their time tonight and for all of that information. That was just so timely. Dr. Kelly, when you were talking, I was just sitting here thinking, and we've got the climate talks that I'm seeing in the news every single day. And so much of what you were saying was tying right into that. And I hope it, for me, it gave a lot of context to what I'm hearing in the news. I hope it did the same for our listeners tonight. And Brian, when you were like, we have a cold snap happening tonight, I was like, wow, this is really, so all of you go flush your sprinkler systems, turn off your water outside, cover your plants.
Bring your pets in.
Bring
your
the
pets in.
in.
Yeah.
That cold snap is happening tonight. So just really timely on those. A little bit, just as a reminder, this is our Elements of Utah series with the Salt Lake County Library. This is our third in the series. So if you missed the first two, those recordings are on our website. We talked about water and the drought and conserving water as we go into this winter. And so you can hear from our experts on that. And followed that up with Earths, where we talked about our backyard ecosystems and how to make some friendly environments for the backyard. And then tonight we had fire, and then in December we're going to be talking more about air and what we can do to have breathable air this winter. One final question that came in, this one is more for Dr. Kelly. So you had mentioned talking about fire, and you talked about controlled burns. That's something also that we've been hearing in the news. So would you say that that is a viable solution to the drought conditions and the massive fire wildfires that we've been having? And also looking at that with those, how it, like for air quality, how is a controlled burn going to be better than the wildfires we've been seeing?
Yeah, so the one of the key points there are a couple key points. So they do it at times of year when they can control it, and you can limit the size of the burn. So it wouldn't be such like the massive fires that have plagued us with the poor air quality. There are going to be local effects and maybe some downwind effects, but the idea is to get them in smaller parcels and to burn them at a time of year when you've got pretty good circulation, and you're not going to get these high concentrations of particle pollution transported over much of the western U.S. So that is a very necessary solution. So the experts on this say that prescribed berms are really going to be part of our strategy to get back to a more sustainable pattern with our forestry and fires.